All right, we just hit 3:30, so we're going to get this meeting going. So we have 4 items on the consent agenda. I would just like to make a note that item number 1 is actually in Ward 6, not Ward 5. It's been moved by Councillor Davey. I'm seeing no questions, so all in favor? Opposed? That's carried. We will move on to item number 5, which is the Victus Hockey Academy Incorporated for Sports World Arena. I don't see did you want to make some opening comments or just here to answer any questions? Just questions, okay. There's one for sure. So if you want to have seats. Councillor Ioannidis, question?
I'll just move the recommendation.
Okay. Councillor Gazzola?
Yeah, I just have a question on page 5.2. You talk about 73,000 rental revenue. Is that gross revenue or is that profit?
Paul?
Through the chair, that is with taxes, gross revenue.
So what's our bottom line going to be on that? Is it going to be a green number or a red number?
Through the chair, it's going to be a green number.
Can you give us some indication of how big or small it'll be?
Well, it depends. It certainly depends on the registration as it looks the first year. This will be the actual amount that we will receive.
Yeah, I'm not sure that I understand how the amount of work that you have to do depends on the registration. Do we not have any idea what we hope to gain from this?
Mr. May might assist.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I believe that 73,000 is the amount of money we'll be receiving. I don't believe there are any direct expenses above and beyond what's already approved in the operating budget.
Well, so then that answers my first question. Then it's profit. Okay, just for the hell of it, there are 5 months in 2016 and 7 in 2017. Why doesn't 5/12 of it come into this year? The figure doesn't mathematically work.
Just the breakdown of this year versus next year. Well, I would assume that it's only going to count for, well, it starts September, right? So the breakdown this year versus next year.
Correct. Through the chair, it is a breakdown of the actual season as it applies to our budget year. So we have that many remaining months in 2016 and then carry over the breakthrough into January of 2017 budget year.
Yeah, okay. It's not an urgent matter.
So it's 4 months this year, 6 months next year, because it only goes to June.
I read where it said it's going to start August the 2nd, 2016. So okay. That's August, September, October, November, December, 5.
Okay, 5, and then till June, right?
7 next year.
Okay.
It's not a big issue.
Regardless, I think the result is that our revenue is $73,000. Councillor Fernandez.
Yeah, I'm thinking that this is really good use of space that may not be maximized at this time. Would that be a correct assumption?
Through the chair, that is correct. It is our lean time of the day and during the year. And to have a public-private partnership like this is certainly advantageous to the city as well as Victus Academy.
Okay. And how or will it impact, because there's going to be training and I would assume some academia happening in the classrooms and then there'll be fitness training. How will this affect, or will it affect the ice time that's happening there already?
Through the chair, we have built in blackout dates for any of the tournaments or the various tournaments that we also have booked. And Victus has graciously worked with us for PD days and things like that with their curriculum, so that we will not have any lost scheduling or scheduling of ice time with any of our current clients.
Okay, because I think that's pretty important, because I mean we hear all the time in the community that there's everybody's scrambling for that piece of ice time that is the most popular time. Will they be doing any stuff on the weekends? Any academia, any training on the weekends?
Through the chair, it is strictly through Monday through Friday, and Friday again, depending on PD days with current scheduling in there.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Councillor Netsky?
This is an operation that's sort of mentioned during the week, will be sort of like 9 to 5 time period, roughly?
Through the chair, to be more exact, 7 to 4:30, they will have access to the building.
Okay. That's the time frame roughly, but I wasn't sure the exact numbers. Now, where will the academia sort of take place? I mean, there's the ice time, but there's also the schooling. So is that, you got room up there to handle that?
Through the chair, we've done several walkthroughs, and we're in the process right now of looking at getting building permits and that to make some adjustments for the various classrooms, but there is adequate meeting space not only for the classrooms but also for the additional workout area.
Okay, sounds good. And so will there be some groups that will be displaced because of a block in time that they may have pick up hockey and stuff like that? You just reschedule them, or what do you do with that?
Through the chair, there will be no conflict with any current programming going on in the building. We've agreed to only use one ice pad at Sports World, and the other one is totally available for any additional programming that we need.
Okay, so they'll only use one ice pad. Which of the two? Which one of the two are they going to use? The practice or the sports?
I'm not sure that that's relevant to the agreement, but if you have a question, a quick answer to it, I'm not sure it matters.
Through the chair, we haven't signed the agreement and decided yet. We're still kind of going through that phase.
Okay. I'm just wondering.
Oh, thank you.
Councillor Singh?
Yes, just first compliments to staff for having worked with the organizer Invictus and having brought this opportunity forward. The next question is, I see in financial implications stating that capital improvements required to operate the academy out of the Sports World Arena will be expense of Victus. So that's the capital. Are there any other depreciative costs because of the expanded usage that is being incorporated as part of the fee that we may not be aware of? Any depreciative costs of the arena, more aggressive usage or expanded usage that we would have to anticipate?
Through the chair, we do not see any additional costs through this usage. It'll be exactly what it is, time that is not used currently, that now bringing in this private-public partnership will expand not only our ice time but also generate new revenue.
Good, thank you. Just a quick comment, Madam Chair. This is an excellent opportunity on our effort for partnerships and sponsorships.
Councillor Schneider?
Thank you, Chair Galloway Seelock. Again, thank you for this. This is just the kind of partnership that we like to look for use of our facilities and bringing up revenue during off times. With these improvements that are going to be made, could this be advantageous for other groups, like in the summer, could they use the classroom facilities? Could they use the workout facilities as part of an offering for a potential hockey camp?
Through the chair, that is certainly feasible, but we're just trying to make sure we crawl before we walk or walk before we run. Some of the equipment has been proposed for other usage, but we wanted to make sure that we laid a strong infrastructure with this program and help them succeed before we started looking at other opportunities.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, there's no further questions. I just have one. And it's on page 2-3, and it's about the renewal of the agreement. It says, the agreement may be renewed on the same terms and conditions, although there shall be no further ability to renew the agreement at the end of the third year. It makes it sound like it's over after 3 years. Does it just mean this current agreement, a new agreement, will have to be struck if it's to continue on?
Through the chair, exactly.
Okay.
We hope that this will be a great win-win partnership for both parties, and that we will only continue to grow it.
Okay, so I think that just needs to be made note because it kind of sounds final at the end of the third year. Okay. So as long as it's with a renew or with a new contract, we can look at something further. Perfect, thank you. That's all the questions that we have. Comments, Councillor, it's been moved by Councillor Ioannidis. Councillor Davey?
Thank you, guys. I wanted to comment on this. This is really a win-win. With a guy with a bit of history in coaching and playing as well, one of the things that's always bothered me is going through any arena and seeing an empty ice pad, because always somebody should be on that. So this is a situation where not only are we going to get some elite athletes on using that ice when it would otherwise be vacant, but also bringing in some revenue to the city. So I would just like to welcome Victus, and I wish you the best of luck with your program.
Mayor Verbanovic?
Thank you very much. I too want to thank staff for the work they put into putting this new partnership with Victus together. I think it's tremendous, not only to see our facilities getting used for more hours during the day, but to be able to have athletes of this caliber training in our community, and whether they move on to university and playing in university or ending up playing in professional sports, the fact that they could spend some of their time in our community is wonderful, and I look forward to seeing this partnership be very successful. So thank you.
Councillor Ioannidis?
Yeah, most of my comments were made by other members, but I really do appreciate everyone involved in this, and I think this is a really niche market that will, resonate within the community. And again, I look forward to one day saying this kid was training here in Kitchener, and now he's playing in the NHL. So I mean, I think we're going to see some success stories out of this partnership.
Councillor Yunetsky?
Yeah, I, as a hockey player as well, an old-timer that is, I've spent many hours in that arena performing, and I like to see it maximized, and it'll be a good opportunity to utilize this. It's a good program. And of course, there's some other academies throughout Ontario that they can go to, so it'll be nice to have them come here, and we get the benefit from the use of the arenas, and then move on to bigger success for the players eventually in their lifetime.
Councillor Schneider?
Thank you. This is one of those classic win-wins, and I'm so happy and proud. I'm very proud of our facilities, and as a guy that plays at Sports World arenas every week, and I see the marquee as I walk in that says Future Home of Victus Academy. Hopefully we can take the word future off sometime this week and be very proud of that. Thank you.
We probably have to wait for council for that because we aren't approving it, so maybe 2 weeks. But that's all the comments. I just quickly wanted to say, again, it's been said, but thank you very much for your hard work. I know it's been not only staff, but Victus, all your hard work in making this happen and coming to our community. I think it's a great start, but I also think that as it, and your philosophy is good to start small and potentially grow. And I think you're taking the right approach, but there's definitely room, and especially in that facility, to expand. And I'd like to see you come back maybe in 2-3 years' time and say, hey, we want that second ice pad, and make it an even bigger program. So I think it's a great facility to start in, but also has an immense amount of potential to grow. So I wish you all the best of luck in this program, and I look forward to hearing about it as it moves forward. So thank you very much. Thank you. So with that, it's been moved by Councillor Ioannidis. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. All right, we'll now move on to the Old Mill Sanitary Sewer Pumping Station. It's my understanding there is no staff presentation, so if anyone has any questions. Councillor Fernandez?
No questions, just a comment. The community, I think, were a little bit concerned about how this was all going to proceed. We've had 2 PICs, and I think that staff and the consultant have made sure that any of the concerns that the public had at the time were put aside. Certainly this pumping station has needed to be upgraded for quite a while, and given the recent spill on the Grand, we want to avoid anything else happening, and I think the location is going to, notwithstanding that it's a pumping station and not a nice facility that's going to be built across the street, I think it's going to address the majority of the concerns. As I'm talking, I'm just sort of thinking out loud. I want to be assured that any endangered species habitat has been addressed through the EA process. I believe I had a conversation with some staff, and I just want to make sure that we've got that all addressed through the EA.
Linda?
Through the chair, we have addressed all the environmental concerns. We did have an environmental consultant on board, and that was flagged through all the alternatives of the ranking. So we did close off all the species at risk and all those concerns.
Okay. And I do recollect one resident being quite concerned about the sort of the tree line along Old Mill, and if we're looking at the map, it would be actually. Now I'm trying to orient myself. Oh, okay. In the left side of the map, where there's a bit of a tree.
It's Appendix A.
Yeah, on this, just beside the Schneider Creek. We are going to have to remove some tree area right in that area. There was some concern about that, but we will do some landscaping again. Okay. All right, because I think my understanding is it's not of any significance at all. It's just a variety of unspecified species that are growing there. Okay, perfect. Thanks very much.
Does that mean you're going to move it?
I will move it.
Okay. Councillor Unetsky?
Yeah, I'm in favor of this proposal. I know the issues that have been involved there back over the years when I was involved with planning and some of the challenges of development for that area. As a result of this, a question: the expansion of or the development of a new pumping station, will its capacity cover the entire catchment area of future development?
Through the chair, yes, it will.
I can't hear you.
Through the chair, yes, it will capture the.
Okay, and its construction will take place next year?
Through the chair, it will commence 2017 and be completed.
And in 1 year?
In 1 year, correct.
Okay, and then the other station, the existing station, will be decommissioned?
Through the chair, correct, yes.
Okay. Perfect, thank you.
Okay, that's all the questions that we have. It's been moved by Councillor Fernandez. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Moving right along to a very long recommendation on school zone 40-kilometer limit pilot project. A few questions. Mayor Verbanovic?
Well, actually not questions, Madam Chair. I'm prepared to move it at the appropriate time.
Okay. I'm seeing a lot of flashing yellow over here. Councillor Ioannidis.
Yeah, and my question is regarding the flashing sign component, and I just want a little bit of clarification on how that's going to work out.
Mr. Carmichael?
Yes, thank you, through you, the chair. In response, we did a pilot project through the 2013-14 school season where we had 9 schools with the 40-kilometer speed limit in effect, and one of those schools had the flashing speed limit signs that were only engaged during school times. Our studies indicated that the speed reduction at that location really didn't differ from the speed reduction we experienced in other locations. As a result, we didn't see the merit in providing the extra expense of that flashing speed limit Another important aspect of that is we also feel it's important to maintain the 40-kilometer speed limit 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, due to the fact that the schools also function as playgrounds for the neighborhoods typically that generate a lot of children in the area, and we figure it would just be a positive to maintain that 40-kilometer speed limit at all times during the day, never mind the benefit of creating that expectation all day as opposed to just school times as well.
Okay, and that extra cost that's associated with it, is it because it's a timer mechanism that's attached to the signs, or?
Through the chair, it's actual infrastructure that we post a speed displays board that requires power. Typically solar power will work as well.
Okay. All right. Well, I do appreciate your efforts on that. Thank you.
Councillor Singh?
Yes, Mr. Carmichael, I'm glad this is coming forward as a limited pilot project. I think this is through various speed calming measures. I think you've heard it on constantly around schools that this is something that needs to be done and asked by parents. The length of that limited or lowering speed, anywhere from 300 meter to 150 meters, is that too small in some cases though? Or do you think there would be recognition by the motorists to see that quick fluctuation in speed from going from, say, 50 to 40, then back to 50 again?
Through the chair, in response to that question, it's a valid question. Keep in mind that it will be signed in advance of the school locations advising the speed limit being reduced. So that gives the drivers notification in advance of the school. Typical procedures used by other municipalities has been to just typically reduce the speed limit on the school frontages. If you want us to explore further than that, we'd be happy to do so, but I would suggest to maintain the thinking that the focus here is on the school area.
No, I appreciate that, especially because
that's the thinking going through.
Yeah, and I'm seeing some of these streets, and some of which are in the ward I represent, and there are some very lengthy roadways where it doesn't merit to reduce the speed to that limit for that full extent of the roadway. So I see that. I just wanted to see or get assurance that 150 meter stretch is still sufficient enough. But from your comment, I'm hearing that. The other thing is, and I'm glad Councillor Ioannidis touched on it as well, as for making sure that the speed limit or reduction is more prevalent for motorists to be able to observe. And you've said some signs that flash is not feasible. What is the cost of a sign like that, just for our interest? Is that in the report? I missed it.
Yeah. It's approximately $6,000 per school, so it would add up quickly.
So it didn't really necessarily, and that's for the cost for powering and all that, or just the cost of?
It's mostly the cost of the infrastructure. Keep in mind you need to have 2 of the signs, 1 in each direction.
Could we not use our existing infrastructure that's already in place with the lighting? Obviously, we would have to work with a utility company, but can that not be utilized as opposed to having standalone?
Not sure I follow your question there. We do require the actual infrastructure of the speed display board to display that speed during a different time period of the day.
Okay. No, I was more basing it on supposing it could be hung on our light posts and stuff using the infrastructure that's there. But I'm guessing the actual power consumption is not the biggest cost. It's the actual, whatever the materials or whatever in the physical aspect of the sign. Okay.
Through the chair, fair statement, absolutely.
So again, you've touched on it. I just wanted to make sure that we've looked at it to its entirety because, again, ensuring that people recognize a speed limit, that's always the case. Sometimes changing speed limits for the sake of it doesn't always accomplish the benefit that we would want. The other is the color of the sign. I'm sorry I'm dwelling into this minutia of it, but I just want to make sure that we've explored all options that would benefit what our intent is. Is it just going to be a regular signs that we typically see, or can they be of a different color that pops out more?
Yes, through the chair, a valid question, but in response, we are required to sign as per the Ontario Traffic Manual, and for regulatory signing that has enforceable regulations behind it, it is required to post the black on white regulatory signs.
None of the regulations allow any more visible signage with colors? From non-standard?
It's very important to maintain the consistency in signing province-wide, so I respect your suggestion there. In my mind, an element of enforcement is going to create a lot more success than different colors to bring attention to it.
Fair enough, and I think
we're still relying on the drivers to adhere to the regulation.
I appreciate that, and that's the whole point of the limited pilot project, and good for staff having brought this.
Councillor Fernandez?
Thanks, Ken, and I know that certainly in my ward there's a number of people who are happy about the reduction, but of course everything, as you indicated in the report, is connected to enforcement. So have we or will we be alerting our regional police about the reduction around all of these schools?
Yes, thank you. Through the chair, very valid question and point. We work closely with the police on establishing enforcement locations on a quarterly basis, and we will be working with them to request that they focus on these locations. It's not just the, if I could add a little commentary to that, not just that. Keep in mind that Waterloo and Cambridge have gone to this, and I think it's a good initiative based on providing consistency throughout the region, creating that expectation for all drivers. Keeping in mind, it'll also tie in well with our school travel planning process that will be starting later this year. It'll give us another tool to help with that. So in my mind, it's only positive to get all the schools consistently with the lowered speed limit. It certainly will give the police a much better tool when they do enforce.
And you're absolutely right, because that's what I heard from a number of residents around that accident that happened on Robert Ferry as well. You know, I'm in Cambridge, and around all the schools they have the reduced speed. So in speaking with the chief at an event that I was at last week, my understanding is that they do a sort of a monthly report, and I could stand corrected, of course, it could be maybe quarterly, as you just said, about the traffic stats and where they've targeted certain areas and what the speeding is throughout those areas. Is that monthly or quarterly?
Through the chair, if it's what I believe you're referring to, it's quarterly. It ties in with the Selective Traffic Enforcement Program enforcement locations. So when we meet with the police, provide them with our requested locations for enforcement, they provide us with the stats, the statistics at that end of that 3-month period, telling us how many hours of enforcement they've put in that location and the number of charges they've laid. Not just speeding charges, but it may be insurance charges or other things like that. And they provide us very good information.
Okay. Would it be possible for us as councillors to have that information to put out to the public? Because I think that's really critical, because we heard from regional police at a meeting that we had with a number of cycling advisory committees, that there is minimal number of traffic officers that can be out there. And I think it might be really both a positive for our police, but also for our community members to understand how much traffic enforcement is actually happening out there. Because the perception is they're everywhere but where they want that particular neighborhood for them to be. And I think the reality is they are pretty spread thin, but they are doing certain targeted areas. Would that be will we have the ability to share that with the public?
Through the chair, we would be more than happy to share that information with the councillors. If we have shared it with the public ourselves in the past on requests, we have used it at public meetings based on the concerns that have been raised. So we'd be happy to share that information with you. And if you wish to share it with constituents you're dealing with, more the merrier.
Okay, so I'm going to sort of make that more of a formal request. I don't know if I need that to be an emotion, or is it just sort of an understanding?
I think it's probably just easy that when they get it, they can flip it to us. I don't think it needs a formal motion.
Okay. I'm happy to do so.
Okay, thanks. So my last question is, so when we were I was looking at the business report, the plan this weekend on 1FI 24, it talks about development of alternative low-cost traffic calming. So is this in line with what some of the low-cost strategies that we're doing and hope to do?
Through the chair, are you referring specifically to the reduced speed limits in school zones?
Right.
I would suggest that this is a separate initiative to that. This is something we proactively have taken an approach on based on the pilot we've already conducted, and feel that it's just good traffic engineering to create that expectation throughout the region. The small-scale traffic calming review would be separated from this.
Okay, that's great. Thank you
Councillor Yanetsky?
On page 2 of the report, in the middle roughly, you indicate that 67% of the deaths in Ontario occurred over speed limits of 50 kilometers per hour, and only 5% on roads below 50. Well, if we've got 67 above and 5 below, that adds up to 72%. What happened to the other 28%?
Through the chair, excellent question, Councillor Yanetsky. I don't have that data in front of me.
I figured the two should add up to 100.
It was part of that chief coroner review that was done 4 years ago that extremely or significantly focused on the impact of speed related to the injury. And basically the main recommendation out of that is to lower the speed, the less chance of fatality and less chance of severe injuries. I would suggest these numbers are a reflection Ontario-wide and would keep in mind all highways would be included on that, and that's why I think you'll find the numbers, the higher numbers of deaths on higher speed highways as a result of that.
Yeah, and I can appreciate that. I just
But sorry,
wondering how the numbers didn't add up.
I do not have that further information for you.
Mr. Reedman, did you want to add something?
Through the chair, I can clarify that. So it's actually 5% below 30 kilometers an hour, and that difference is between the 30 and 50 kilometer an hour speed limit.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand your answer.
So there's 5% chance of death when being hit by a car at 30 kilometers an hour, and then that difference is the range between 30 and 50 kilometers an hour. So that should be corrected in the report to say, and only 5% on roads below 30 kilometers an hour.
Okay, we'll talk after. So you indicated that in your comment that this speed limit would be in place 24 hours a day as opposed to during school hours?
Through the chair, yes, that's our recommendation.
So even at 2 o'clock in the morning, anybody driving by would have to abide by 40 Ks?
Correct.
All right. Interesting to note that on page 7.4, in the middle of the report, you state that the Transportation Services is still hesitant to install signs that will be disregarded. Could you elaborate on what you mean by that?
Yes, through the chair, that comment is a reflection of the reality that without a significant amount of enforcement, typically traffic signs, and I'm generalizing here, won't be adhered to as well. Point being is sometimes just changing signs does not change driver behavior. Drivers typically will drive what they feel comfortable that the road gives them, and all the signing and legislation we put in place, unless we have an amount of enforcement behind it, the effectiveness isn't as great without the enforcement.
Yeah, I can appreciate you coming from on that. Interesting to note that, and I'm looking at your Appendix A, I've got 3 streets identified, 3 schools identified in my ward that really aren't in my ward, in somebody else's ward, so just a matter of clarification. Carmichael, Queen Elizabeth, and St. Bernadette. I only have Kaufman here. And my last comment would be, I note that in your recommendation, one of the streets to be identified is on Queens Boulevard, which is the Southridge Public School. And yet on Queens Boulevard, it's a 4-lane road, 2 ways each way. And then I have a school on Westmount, Forest Hill Public School, and that's not listed. So we are identifying one school to be reduced from 50K to 40K, and Forest Hill, there's no change. Could you help me out?
Through the chair, in response, actually, we are only keeping in mind with public schools that are on city roadways. So the Westmount one you referred to is a regional roadway, so that wouldn't be included in this report. And we are recommending that the 40-kilometer speed limit be implemented at all public schools with the exception of the Southridge School on Queens Boulevard due to the fact that it does function as an arterial roadway.
Sorry, that it functions?
As an arterial roadway, and it's designed more so to carry traffic like a regional roadway and the success of reduced speed limits on roadways of that classification is significantly reduced.
So are you telling me that it'll be at 50K still?
That's correct.
I
That's
sort of
the
read
only
it that it's
school
going to
we're
be reduced. That's the way I understood it.
All the other schools are being recommended to reduce to 40K. Southridge is the only one on Queens Boulevard that we're recommending staying at 50K.
Well, then how come there's a statement here from Queens Boulevard, Silvercrest to Bonfair on page 2 of those, the whole list of streets?
Sorry, can you refer me more specifically to where you're referring?
Yeah, it's about 10, on page 2, top of page 2, about 10 streets down, Queens Boulevard. So that applies to Southridge?
It's in the recommendation. It's like 5 from the bottom.
Fair enough. I'm trying to think if that's the location that this Southridge is located at, because it's near Egan, correct?
Near where?
Egan Drive is where
That's
Southridge
correct.
School is?
Yeah, Egan is right opposite the school.
Well, I think that's something that we can look into and get an answer for council, which is in 2 weeks. I think you might be right, Councillor Nesky, though.
Yes, if I could interject, that should not be included in the locations as a recommended reduction to 40 kilometers. Our apologies for that error.
So we'll remove that one then.
Correct.
Thank you.
Councillor Schneider?
Yes, thank you, Chair Galloway Seelock. Thanks for all the hard work on this. It's truly needed. Just a question about the speed limit sign. Sometimes on a street, just before the speed reduces, there's a warning sign that says 40K ahead. Is that part of this, or could it potentially be part of it, just to have a little pre-warning that it's going down to 40 so you don't start slowing down when you hit the 40?
Through the chair, the Ontario Traffic Manual recommends that you post a speed reduction sign if the speed change is 20 kilometers per hour or more. So if it was 60 to 40, yes, we will be. I'm not sure we have any examples of that. So our intent at this point would not necessarily to put those in. Should we be directed to do so, keep in mind that that would add a cost of 2 additional signs per location, which instead of $1,000 per location, we'd probably be looking at closer to $1,400 per location.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Marsh?
Thank you. I had a couple of minor tweaks just to some details in the report as well, but I can take that offline and just ask that the report be, brought forward at council with the revisions. Also, if Councillor Schneider wishes to add that amendment to the additional signs, I would support that. Not at this time. I would. I would like to propose that we add 40 kilometers ahead signage, just to help emphasize that the school zones are special and different for drivers to be reminded. I've often seen drivers look at the 40-kilometer sign and quickly put on their brakes. That I think that this type of signage might alleviate that type of problem.
Before you click off, would you like to make that amendment, or do you want to give that direction to staff to come back with a little bit more information for when we deal with this at council?
Absolutely, that's fine.
I just think there might be a little bit more.
If there is additional information, then
just cost-wise and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
If that's a direction, we can take that as a motion.
Yeah, and even the direction would also be for staff to advise us on if we were to add signage ahead of the speed limit reduction. Perhaps the signage should say something different. I don't know, maybe like school zone ahead instead of 40 kilometers ahead.
Sure. Yeah. Mr. Carmichael, did you want to add something?
Yes, through you, the chair, I will remind council that all schools are very well signed with school zone signs already. So putting additional school zone signs would be redundant in my opinion.
Okay, I think we got it. All right, Mayor Branovic, is yours questions or comments? Okay, we're going to save comments because there's still quite a few to go here. So
Questions?
you can ask your question.
Okay. So my only question with respect to this was it would appear that the best time to do this would be in the lead up to the new school year. Did we look at all to see is there any way for us to actually install these over the summer months in the lead up to the fall, like these summer months, the 2016 summer months? And what would it take for that to happen?
Through the chair, in response, we are endeavoring to place all signs on existing posts, meaning what I'm getting by that is a typical delay in the process of installing signs is waiting for utility locates when we're putting new posts into the ground. I would suggest we'll probably have to do some posts, new posts with locates. We could get that done. I'm speaking for another work group, but I believe that that's very doable. The challenge would be is that we don't have current funding in our budget to support this initiative, and that would be an over-expenditure in an existing budget.
Okay, so then I guess my question to Mr. Chapman would be, if it was the desire of council to see this done this year, what would that look like? What could we shift around, or what could be done to help facilitate that in 2016?
Mr. Chapman?
Because we're not talking about a lot of money.
Right. Through the chair, I'd suggest we report back on that to council as well. Obviously, the area had a strategy for 2017 funding, so I think we need to go back and review what that plan was and how it might be brought forward.
Okay. Well, I can ask for that information to come back.
Yeah, you sure can. That was actually going to be my point, so I'm just going to jump in for a quick second. That could be just simply an over-expenditure this year, which we currently are running a potential surplus in our operating budget, right? Yeah.
Oh, this is capital, isn't it?
That's why I say we'll go back and review all of that. At the end of the day, you could give direction to fund it through operating as an over-expenditure. That would be a default. But to the extent there was a plan for 2017, we'll see if that can be brought forward.
Okay, well, let's see what we can come up with.
Okay,
I don't want to cause our finance chair to have a heart attack either. So
it's also hard on a day where
we can look at some options. That would be great.
It's pretty rare we end up with a surplus in our operating at this point of year, and to start using some of that, it's a little scary, but I think you make a good point. So, sorry, and Councillor Etherington.
Through you, Madam Chair, to Ken. Ken, I like the report and the content. I agree with these overdue reductions in speed. But I have a lot of trouble getting my head around the logic, which I've encountered before on page 7-4. Can you just explain to me why the region or why this would not apply to Kitchener schools on arterial roads? It seems to me that I recognize that traffic travels faster on regional roads, but is that the only reason for not trying to control the speed of the traffic? If my kids went to Southridge, I'd certainly be concerned about it.
Through the chair, in response, I appreciate the question. In response, I would suggest it's the reality that arterial roadways are designed for higher speeds, and drivers recognize that. And it goes back to road geometrics are probably the biggest influence on driver speeds than any signing or any regulation or speed limit we put in place. So arterial roadways such as Queens Boulevard are designed to move traffic. Putting in a 40-kilometer speed limit, quite frankly, would need significant enforcement to be successful, and without the enforcement, I don't anticipate it would be adhered to very well. You take a few hundred-meter section of a significantly long arterial roadway where there's significant volumes and according speeds, that just putting up a few signs and expecting those drivers to slow down through that school frontage without an officer sitting there is a big ask.
And I understand that, but what I don't understand is, okay, so let's say the limit is 50 on that road. Someone sometime a traffic engineer must have thought, well, we'll make it 50 and expect people to obey it. So why wouldn't they obey 40?
Through the chair, the roadway was actually designed on that speed limit. So when it got designed, built, and opened, that was based on the geometrics designed into the plan. That's the anticipated speeds.
Okay. I agree.
Wider lanes, wider right-of-way, bigger area, those all lead to higher speeds.
We'll agree to disagree. Thanks.
Councillor Davey, question?
Thank you. Just one question on the amendment. I think I missed the comment on how much the potential extra cost might be if we have the warning or the additional sign. Could you comment on that again, please?
Through the chair, we'll detail those in our report back before council, but I'm estimating an additional $400 per location, making it $1,400 instead of $1,000.
Okay, so if I'm looking at this right then, so 40% higher than the 38,000.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Ioannidis, is yours a comment or question? Okay, go ahead.
I forgot to mention this. As part of the pilot project, I've noticed that there is a range from basically from +3 to -20. So to me, the one that I see in particular that is a -20 difference is a significant difference, which means it's being really effective. So I'm just wondering why in particular, because that's the area I represent, why that one school sees significant reduction in speeds. Is it because the school that's located there bought into this, or is there other factors that you can determine from your professional opinion?
Through the chair, that number stood out to us as staff as well. We weren't expecting to get any type of reduction to that degree. I don't have a reasonable explanation why we experienced such lower speeds there. I really don't. When we did the before and after studies, the only changes made were the speed limit signs. So we were quite surprised to see that reduction in that one location.
Okay. Well, to clarify that, I was actually standing out there saying stop. No, just kidding. But
then we'll clone you and send you to all the schools.
But okay. As far as the other one where there's an increase in speed, do you have a reasoning for that one?
Through the chair, I believe that the roadway was resurfaced and reconstructed between the before and after studies. So before was on an older roadway that wasn't in good condition. The after studies would have been done after the reconstruction, fresh asphalt, which I think we all can assume can lead to higher speeds.
Okay. Thanks for your answers.
Councillor Fernandez, is yours another question? Go ahead.
Actually, I didn't notice that as detailed as Councillor Ioannidis did, but yes, there are some interesting increases, and one that my residents have been screaming around J.W. Girth actually is 12 kilometers higher than the 40-kilometer speed. Well, that wasn't a pilot school, right? That's just what's been going on around that school.
No, that was a pilot school.
J.W. Girth?
Yeah, it's right on the
Yes.
chart on 7-2.
Okay.
Yeah, the studies included within the report were the 9 pilot locations that we did.
Mm-hmm. I don't know why I don't recollect seeing that when I bike past there. Okay, my other question was related to if we are able to move ahead for September. I was going too fast. Is that what you said, Councillor Gazzola? If we are able to implement this by September, would it be possible to, especially because of the active, safe, and routes to school workshop that we had last week, partner with both school boards and the parent councils to get the word out? September 6th is the new start date for the new school year. That should give everybody a fair bit of time to provide information out to the general public of each school for opening day. Would we be able to do that?
Through the chair, I think that's an excellent suggestion, and quite frankly, I think we'd be crazy not to take advantage of that opportunity to. This is a fairly significant recommendation we're putting forward, and I think it's important that we as staff follow up with our communications division and maybe come up with a game plan on a little bit of promotion around it.
And I think certainly every
Publicity.
council here would be happy to include that in maybe their September column. Or okay, thank you.
Anybody else have questions? I have 3 people in the queue. I'm assuming it's for comments. Mayor Verbinovic?
Madam Chair, and I realize I made the motion. I actually would like to see formalized in the motion the request for funding and installation recommendations to come back to us. So I can either add it on to the tail end of the motion or do it as a separate motion, whichever you prefer.
No, so the intent was, we have the motion and it's been moved, that we would add in the recommendation that staff report back on having the 40 kilometers ahead sign. That's what I wrote down. It's probably a better way of saying that. And also that they report back on the financing and the ability to get it done for the September 2016 school year.
Okay.
That's the way I was
Okay,
intending
so
on
that's part of my motion. I'm okay with that then.
What's that?
If that's part of the motion I moved,
Yeah.
then that's fine.
Yeah, that's the way I was
Okay.
going to handle it. Okay, so I believe we're into comments. Councillor Ioannidis?
Yeah, I think as holistically with all the concerns that we have around schools in particular, with other issues and everything else, and kids going to and from school and the safety concerns, I think this is long overdue. I'm glad to see this here. I think it, I know at a minimum this will at least set an expectation. But I do have some caution in this, and I think out of the expectation, I don't think we should tame it, because I think part of at John Darling we saw a drastic reduction there. Is I think in part the school there was actively participating with that, and so I think that component is when we do have the messaging go out, that the schools in themselves send messages out to parents. But again, the reality of the situation is, when you look at most of these roads, the people that are traveling on these roads are the same people that travel it every single day. So they know the school's there, and they're purposely still speeding. So I mean, this is a positive step, but I think we still need to curtail some of our expectations.
Sorry, I forgot to ask my own question. It's really quick. Did we look at any private schools or French schools when we were doing this?
Through the chair, in response, no, we did not. We've limited it to the public schools at this point.
Is that something we can do, like, in the future? I'm not suggesting for council, but something just to look at. I don't think it's a lot. There's not a lot to look at, but I think it might be something that, if we're going to be consistent, we need to look at those as well, if they warrant it too, right? Depending on the size of their school.
We'll be happy to follow up on those as well.
Thank you. All right, Councillor Marsh.
Just want to comment that I too am very happy to see this report come forward and am fully in support of lowering the speed limit. I did want to just add a brief comment. I can add to the explanation for why there was an increase on Sterling Avenue North at Shepherd School, and that's because it was by far the lowest starting speed at 42 kilometers an hour before the signage was put up, and so it's a minor variance in the difference between pre and post. So that's all.
Councillor Schneider.
Thank you, Chair Galloway Seelock. I am really happy to support this and appreciate all the effort that's gone into it, because I think we all get comments about school safety and speeds. I've personally been out in front of a school in my ward to take pedestrian and car counts and talk to parents. This is going to be very welcomed. I agree with Mayor Verbanovic that if we can implement this as soon as possible, it would be great. The warning signs that you're entering a 40K zone or a school zone would also be helpful, and there may be an added cost, but if it helps to prevent an incident, it's well worth it. Looking forward to supporting this.
Mayor Verbanovic.
Thank you very much, and I want to begin by, thanking staff for all the work that was done on this pilot project. As I think all of us know, probably one of the single biggest complaints we collectively get is about traffic issues in our wards, and certainly traffic issues, whether it's speeds in the neighborhood of schools, whether it's a drop-off zone issue, it's a combination of things, continue to be a significant issue for many of our residents. And so I'm pleased to see the recommendation here. It's obviously not going to be a be-all and end-all solution, because, as others have pointed out, there are going to be challenges, including enforcement, and we're going to have to work with our police partners to see that get dealt with as much as possible. And I'm also pleased to see that staff is open to coming back with recommendations on how we can move this forward, because I think it is an important priority for our residents, and if we can do this sooner rather than later at not significant cost, I think it will just be a further demonstration of our commitment to address some of the traffic issues that exist within our city.
Councillor Singh.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I think safety of our children is of always paramount importance, and I think this report addresses this. We have continued to hear from our residents, concerned parents, that more needs to be done around speed calming close to and around our public schools. I agree. It's unfortunate and reprehensible for some motorists to not adhere to the appropriate posted signage and drive whatever they feel that they want to. But this lowering of the speed allows us to add some extra teeth for enforcement, where they may think that they can do whatever, but all it takes is a ticket for them to rechange that behavior, and hopefully this would allow us to do that. And again, we need to work with our police department to ensure that not only is there just signage, but we have constant enforcement along these trial project for where we are lowering the speed limits. The other thing that's aspect of some frustration on my part is I think these are good opportunities for us to be able to work with our school board. And the reason why I say this is I think some of us ask questions of increased signage, better mechanism or technologies that could be used for more prevalent signage by our motorists, but that comes at a cost. And sometimes a cost that's difficult for us to bear when there is perhaps maybe limited success to it. But even when it comes to safety of our kids, even when it's limited success, I think we need to be open to all opportunities. But that's where we should be able to work with the school board, and I don't think it's our fault. I think we would always be open to it. That ends up being sometimes a one-way conversation where no response is received. And I would hope perhaps we can continue to push to look for avenues where there could be cost sharing, where we could add additional measures to ensure safety of our children around schools. The other thing is aspect of accelerating this. I think delaying this, that's one loss of a year. If you could do this, quickly as possible, I absolutely agree with that recommendation and the intent for increased signage that makes aware that there is a reduction in speed. I'd be open to, again, hearing more from staff exactly what that would encompass, but around council, I would probably be supportive of that recommendation as long as the staff comes back with the appropriate information and they see that there would be a real benefit of that as well. But I think this is a great step forward, and I'm pleased to be able to support it.
Councillor Davey?
Thank you. And Ms. Chair, I understand we will be voting on the warning signs as an amendment?
No, I was going to take them all together, but I can take them separately, and it's not an official amendment, it's just a report back. So we're not deciding on whether or not it's going to be done, but just to report back for council.
Yeah, I actually would be fine if we could vote on that one item separately. I'm supportive of this. I mean, a lot of the reductions in speed have been modest, but every little bit helps. So I'm definitely supportive, and I'm also supportive of looking at how we can implement this immediately, because I think there is value. I do want to specifically vote against the advanced warning signs, because staff has already indicated that there are school zone signs ahead of that, plus there's going to be these ones now, so I think there is a bit of redundancy coming up, and doing quick math as well. Again, it wasn't staff's recommendation that we do this, but it looks like it would cost an additional $15,000, and I don't think it's warranted, so I would like to see this dropped at this time.
Councillor Gazzola?
Yeah, I wasn't going to say anything, but I should add my 2 cents worth. I'm totally in favor of where we're going here. It's the only logical way to go. I would also support that we can find the money to do this right away and have it ready for September of 2016. And I also do not support the redundant warning signs. I think we've been clearly told by our staff that they really don't add that much. I do want to take a little different light of it, though, that we need to continue to teach our children about the issues of safety and all that. We can't just be changing all these rules. Our children have to learn. I have 3 grandchildren that go to school by themselves in the center of the universe, Toronto, and they manage quite well. Their attitudes are different. They're much more prepared for this, and all kids need to remember that. So there's a lot of onus on the city and on the school boards and authorities, but there still is a lot of onus on the parents.
Thank you. That's all the comments in the queue. I'm just going to make a couple. Just on what Councillor Gazzola just said, we also have a really great program here in the city. I think it's in Kitchener. No, it might be in Cambridge. But the Children's Safety Village, which does exactly that, allows for children to go there through their school groups and learn how to properly cross streets, whether it be as a pedestrian or on a bicycle or in a motor vehicle. I don't know if they still do that, but that's where I did my co-op placement in grade 12. So it's a great asset that we have, and now it's expanded also to fire safety as well. So I think it's a great tool that we have. So I agree that we need to continue to educate our children on how to safely cross streets. I agree with a lot that's been said. I'm happy to see this before us. I'm happy to see it moving forward. I, too, was going to raise the issue around trying to have this in place by September 2016 for the school year. I think that's critical, and then we can also, by doing that, piggyback on the messaging that we could assist from the school board and from their schools themselves. I know, I think Councillor Ioannidis alluded to maybe that's the school got on board with the pilot project at John Darling, and that might be why we see that huge percentage decrease of speed. I know from a school that had some confrontation, or an individual who had confrontation with a bylaw officer when the school got involved, it became an issue and parents really took note to it. So I think if not only the signs can go up, but we can leverage the ability of the schools to communicate it with the students and the parents, I think it'll have a compounding effect. So I think we really need to start it off from the beginning of a school year. So I look forward to seeing what comes back with that report when this comes back to council. So good work. And we will deal with, I'm going to just deal with them separately, just to make it easy, and it'll be clear. So we're going to just start with recorded votes. We'll do it on all 3. So we're going to start with the recommendation, which deletes the Queen Street Boulevard, the 5th from the bottom, as part of the recommendation. That's moved by Councillor Ioannidis. Oh, sorry, it's right, you're right. No, it was moved, you're right, it was moved by Mayor Verbanovic. You moved the last one, so I'm... Ooh. So everyone's got to vote if you haven't. That's carried unanimously. All right, next we will deal with Councillor Marsh's report that she's asked to come back. So I'm assuming she moved it. The report is for additional information around having 40-kilometer ahead signage put in place. And just to be clear, that's for council, 2 weeks. Right. It's a report back. Are those in favor? Those opposed? That carries. And then the last one is for staff to bring back a report with options to finance this program to begin by September 2016. And that's moved by Mayor Verbanovic. And that carries unanimously. With that, we are all done. Community and Infrastructure Services.